It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce Professor Michael Rudolph here in Johannesburg. I've known for many years as a dental student. He was so helpful to me. So Prof, if you could just tell us about your life, where you grew up and why you decided to do dentistry and what you're doing now.
Thanks, Les. My name is Michael Ben Yitzhak. My dad is Isaac, or Isidore Rudolph, and my late mom was Naomi. My mom her family came originally from Poland via the UK to South Africa, and my dad came from Lithuania. And so I'm a fourth generation South African. In fact, my grandparents and great-grandparents are both buried in the Klerksdorp cemetery. And my great-grandfather's name was Menachem. My dad was a doctor. He was based in Middelburg during the army, Middelburg, Transvaal. And he so enjoyed that small country area that he eventually stayed on as a doctor in Middelburg, formed a wonderful partnership with the late Dr. Max Patz, and they had a wonderful partnership and friendship. So I grew up in Middelburg until the age of 10. Middelburg did not have an English-speaking high school. So a lot of the Middelburgers, including the Brozens and the Levines and well-known families, all sent their kids to Pretoria Boys High as the closest, and it had a good reputation, high school, English-speaking high school. But then as I grew up, my parents decided to move to Johannesburg, and we came to Johannesburg in 1956. I was born 1946. And we grew up in Cyrildene, went to Observatory. I eventually end up at King Edward's, King Edward VII. Great school, great friends. I was very involved in sport. My dad, as I mentioned, is a doctor. My brother did medicine. Quite a number of cousins did medicine, and so I was enveloped in an environment that was, very medically orientated.
Can I ask, where did your father study medicine?
So my dad qualified from Wits in 1941, and I think that although it wasn't an active decision, my dad was an incredibly dedicated general practitioner. He would leave at 5-6 o'clock in the morning, do home visits, then go to the office, do home visits in the evening, and come home at 9 o'clock at night. And I think that perhaps that was one of the reasons for me choosing dentistry and not medicine, that he just worked so incredibly hard, and I just thought that maybe dentistry would offer a more structured day. But I was a rather unhappy dental student. I just didn't feel satisfied with what I was doing and what I was learning. But I managed to get through. I think that, again, I was very involved with sport, particularly the Wits rugby team. Very proud that I was with one of the most successful Wits rugby teams. We were the first team to win the Pirates Grand Challenge League. We had some wonderful games against our main rivals, Tuckies, Pretoria University, and I was on the winning team against Tuckies, which was just one of the highlights of my sporting career. Interestingly enough, 7 of our Wits' first team were Jewish guys,
Really?
which was quite unique. That 7 out of 15, the late Alan Levine, Dougie Smolin, Kenny Resnick, Robbie Mentor, Alan Mentor, goodness, who am I leaving out? But we really had a Jewish team, and in fact, we were often accused of those Yorkies. So we were communists, being at Wits, and Yorkies. And there are lovely stories about that. Anyway, I managed to get through my dental career. It didn't do particularly well. Went off to London, had a great year in London, touring and being in practice with a fabulous ex-South African Dr. Neville Klein. He was a great mentor and a friend. And I came back to South Africa, and my dad, who always took an interest in my work, without me knowing, registered me to do a course in periodontology within weeks of me coming back. And I attended the course with then Professor Harold Lowy, who was a very well-known periodontist, published a lot of books. And he triggered off an interest in preventive dentistry, which remained with me forever. And after that course, I just committed myself to preventive dentistry. I think I was one of the first dentists in South Africa to have 2 full-time oral hygienists.
Did you finish periodontology?
So I didn't do periodontology, but just the course. I did a higher diploma in periodontology with Professor John Lemmer, which was also as a result of this course with Harold Lowy. But it was more the preventive aspect that I just embraced that, and my practice became very preventive orientated. And I was in practice for a few years, and then I got a call from, it was interesting, almost like a conference call from Professor Frikkie van Renen, who was the dean, and Dr. Helmut Haidt. They were together on the call, and they called me and asked if I was interested in starting a new department of community dentistry. And it was quite a shock, because I didn't have a strong academic sort of feeling. I was now much happier in my dental work. I was doing the kind of work that I was enjoying. I had the 2 oral hygienists, I had a great number of patients, and this call came through to do community dentistry. To be quite honest, I didn't really know what that meant. I knew it had some aspect of prevention, and they said to me that if I was interested, they would get me a bursary to go and study overseas and to start the new department of community dentistry or public health dentistry at Wits. I am a high-risk person. I didn't really know what I was in for. I looked up a number of schools of public health, which included Harvard, it included Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and Hadassah. But my older brother, who qualified as a doctor, had recently moved to Boston. And with my brother and his wife and their family being in Boston, and of course Harvard University, who offered this course, I made the decision to go to Harvard. I got a bursary from the Department of Health, and Jeannie and I went off to Boston, where I did my Master of Public Health at the School of Public Health at Harvard University. Just the most incredible time. not only the course that I was exposed to a completely new field, but the class was made up of a range of people from all over the world. And that in itself was just incredibly exciting, different cultures and different orientation. Just before we left, I had my first contact with Chabad. I had quite a few patients from the Chabad community. But by the time I left, I hadn't made any commitments yet. And we had a great year in Boston, not only studying, but just Boston is a wonderful city. Of course, my brother and sister-in-law were there. We enjoyed wonderful concerts at the Boston Symphony Theatre. So we had a wonderful experience. I got my MPH, came back to South Africa, and started on a part-time basis the new Department of Community Dentistry. It was part-time before they had established a full-time post, and in 1981 I left practice and got my specialty degree based on the grandfather clause and my master in public health, and I started the Department of Community Dentistry. I was incredibly enthusiastic about bringing all this new knowledge from Boston and to apply it in the South African context. And I was a little naive, and I came to change Wits Dental School, Wits University, dentistry, South Africa. I'm just so pumped up. But I was also very naive, and I didn't realize the resistance to change. The dental school had an excellent reputation. They produced excellent dentists. But I was coming with a whole new orientation, with a whole new way of thinking, of taking dentistry to the millions of South Africans who had not previously had exposure to dentistry. I brought with me new ideas about new personnel providing basic dental care rather than using dentists, which was very expensive. And I came across quite a lot of resistance to these new ideas. In fact, and I'd like to share the story, that after about 6 months, the dean asked me to come and present my thoughts and ideas of what I wanted to do. And I spent weeks and weeks of preparing this presentation of how I was going to introduce community dentistry into first year and second year, and build an ever-increasing curriculum throughout the school, and introducing research and introducing new courses. Anyway, I came and I had prepared, and I was the youngest by far of all the other heads of departments. And I presented this case, and I thought I did quite a good job. And at the end, there was a discussion amongst all the heads of departments to say, well, what do they think? And every one of my ideas were rejected. I can't remember being so upset, so devastated. And I walked out the room, and the late Professor Arthur Lewin followed me, and he said to me, with his lovely sense of humor, he said to me, Mike, do you play poker? I said, no. I said, I don't play cards at all. He said, I thought not. He said to me in typically Arthur Lewin fashion, he said, you bloody idiot, you never show your full hand all at once. He said, what you did today, you sort of said everything you wanted to change. He said, start A little bit at a time, gradually at a time. It was such an incredible lesson for me, and I actually thank the late Arthur Oliver Sholem for that unbelievable pearl of wisdom. But because I was so young and so enthusiastic, I just wanted to change everything. So that was one of the incredible lessons that I learned. And so I did start slowly. We introduced courses in the first year and then the second year, and there was a little bit of resistance, but as the students got involved and showed interest, and as you know, we took students to the Transkei. Just for the list, for the people viewing this, the then Transkei had about 4 million people living in the Transkei. They had 4 dentists for 4 million people.
And can I just add, and out of those 4 dentists, they treated in the main cities, Umtata, Port St. John's, a bit of quite a substantial white population that were in the cities. So the black population didn't really have access to
exactly.
dentists.
And so we worked day and night, well, not at night, but we worked from early morning till late in the evening. And it was an incredible experience. And for me, one of the nicest features of those trips was in the evenings where all of us were together.
That's incredible.
And we chatted and we got to go. And in fact, Neil Myberg said to me after one of those tours, he said he had been at dental school for 5 years and he had very rarely engaged in any real deep discussions with his fellow classmates because there was no time. People were rushing from one lecture to the clinics and then exams, etc., etc. And he said that those tours provided a most incredible space and opportunity to actually get to know one another. And we would sit around and have a beer and get to know one another. And so those tours were really quite remarkable and exposed many young dental students to the social and economic issues that South Africa was already facing that they were facing at that time.
Can I add, just briefly, because I went on the tour with you, there were the population, mainly it was totally black population, that we went into the rural areas. Some had never seen a white person before, and to get to come, they knew there were going to be medical staff. It was a day journey, and there was no electricity in the rural huts where they stayed, and the treatment that we had to do was the first time they'd ever had dental treatment in their lives. It was something astonishing.
It was, and you know,
we were exposed to the real South Africa, the real.
And I remember playing touch rugby on the beach in Port St. John's, and I still got a photograph of a lady. There were no wheelchairs, so this lady was being wheeled in a wheelbarrow, and she had a cleft palate. And she was quite old. I don't know how she survived. I mean, the cleft palate was never treated. So it was a remarkable. Many trips. I did quite a number of trips. To the Transkei with the students, and to Botswana and other areas. And then WITS went through an important restructuring. There were 9 faculties at WITS at the time. There was the medical faculty, the dental faculty, and the faculty for nursing and allied sciences. All of those 3 faculties combined into one faculty of health sciences. And I had, shortly after I returned from Boston and starting the new Department of Community Dentistry, I developed a very nice relationship with Professor John Gear, who was the professor of community health, general health. And of course our approach and our philosophy and our orientation was very similar. It was just that I was obviously focused on dental and he was on general, but we had so much in common. And so when that restructuring happened, the Department of Public Health Dentistry or Community Dentistry became part of the Department of Community Health. And in fact, John and I were the original founders of the School of Public Health at Wits. And so in 1997, I actually moved from the dental school to medical school, and I was physically and philosophically located sort of in the School of Public Health, although I provided lectures and did research with the dental school. In the interim, I had become involved in Chabad. Also a lovely story, Rabbi Mendel Lipsker, who was the head shliach of Chabad, was referred to me as a patient, very charismatic rabbi, and I often tell the story that I was working on Rabbi Lipsker with my mirror and my probe and the suction and a drill, and the nurse was working in his mouth, but he is such an articulate person. He was even able to talk while I had all those instruments in his mouth. And he said to me, this was, what am I doing for Shabbos? And at that stage, I said, what is Shabbos? And he said, come and see what Shabbos is. And I went to him on a Friday night in his little flat in his Rebbetzin Mashi's flat in Yeovil. The table could normally accommodate 6 to 8 people, but there must have been 20 people around the table. And here was a young man, and I'd been to university, I'd been to Harvard, I'd been exposed to really incredible professors and wise people. But this young rabbi on this Friday night started speaking pearls of wisdom, pearls of Torah, that just knocked me over. And the following Friday night I went to the shul, and within weeks I decided that this is the direction I was going to take, and that Baruch Hashem, my wife supported me, and thank God our children and our grandchildren are now very much part of the community. But also sort of part of my work of traveling around South Africa is that when I would daven in a place in the Transkei or put on tefillin, I just thought that, I wondered if anybody had done that in that particular place. So it was incredible. I really enjoyed my work. It was sort of breaking new ground in terms of public health. There was quite a lot of resistance, but I just felt very, very passionate about it. But I also need to go back a couple of years, in that when I made the original decision to take up this new career, it wasn't an easy decision. I had a nice practice, I was doing well, I was starting to earn a decent living, and then this idea of starting a new department came up, and a whole new career, and an academic career. And somebody said, why don't I go ask the Lubavitcher Rebbe? And I said, well, I'm really confused. I'm going to do that. So I said to Jeannie, come with me. I need you, because this is really a big decision. And so we went to see the Rebbe. Hashgocha, incredible. We were there in Purim of 1981. It was only 2 or 3 months later that the Rebbe stopped giving personal audiences. And Jeannie and I had just the greatest honor and merit of being in the presence, just the two of us with the Rebbe for 5 minutes. I had sent in a note asking him for a brocha and to assist me with the decision about moving to an academic position, and the Rebbe gave me a clear brocha to take up the university position.
And you had you were in his office?
In his office, at his desk. He gave me a clear...
And did your wife join you?
And my wife, Jeannie, was there. He then, after he gave me a brocha, he gave Jeannie a wonderful brocha to bring nachas to people through her music. He was very specific about embellishing and orchestrating the Mittler Rebbe's Kapella, but he was equally emphatic about that she should not touch the Alter Rebbe's nigun, because that was holy and pure, and it should not be embellished or elaborated on. And then a lovely aspect of that whole visit is that at that stage we had our daughter Jackie, Natalie and Sarah, and Jeannie was pregnant with Tamar, and so we had a photograph of our 3 girls, Jackie, Natalie and Sarah, and we said to the Rebbe, we said, our children are at home, but we've got a photograph of them just to show you. And the Rebbe, like a Zaydis, looked at this photograph with this broad smile. He said, you've got the originals, I'm going to keep the photograph.
Wow.
And he put the photograph in his desk. And so in those 5 minutes, almost my mission in life was clarified. This was the direction that I was going to. I had the bruch of the Rebbe. Jeannie had this unbelievable endorsement for her music, and in a way the fact that he had a picture of our daughters, and Jeannie was pregnant with Tamar, and it was just very special. And I can say without fear of contradiction that the difficulties and challenges, like everybody in every career, and some of the resistance I had, I just knew that the Rebbe's Brucha would just assist me just to get through, and to this day, just have that sense of confidence that I was given a clear direction to fulfill my mission and my career. My late mom and dad, who I referred to earlier, were very community orientated. They did a lot of work, volunteer work, working for Rotary and other organizations, and I suppose I picked that up from them. So I really enjoyed going into the community and assisting and taking dental care to them. We developed mobile dental units, and again, even in the wider South African, not only wider South African, wider Johannesburg area, it was quite phenomenal of taking a service to so many thousands of people who had never ever known dental care, who lived with pain and infection, who had never had a filling. And so it was incredibly rewarding doing this kind of work, doing pioneering research, developing courses, and what was also quite special, that being a full-time staff member, I was entitled to attend, and I got an overseas trip paid for to attend conferences every couple of years. The community dentistry courses and conferences were always held in September or October, and so every couple of years I would go to the States to attend a course or a conference in San Diego or San Francisco or Boston or New York, but I always would spend a few days with the Rebbe. Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah. So those visits were just unbelievable. Being in 770 with these thousands of Hasidim, and with the Rebbe, and dancing, and just remarkable. So I often think that the whole purpose of me originally choosing dentistry was in a way to become frum, and to get this brocha from the Rebbe, and to end up doing academic work, which was really not really my original thought, but I just loved doing it, and I wasn't a real academic. I wasn't a scholar. It was just taking knowledge from a university and actually sharing that knowledge in the wider community, applying that knowledge, not only sharing it sort of from a knowledge point of view, but applying it in terms of practical translation of that knowledge into uplifting communities, through dentistry. I did interesting work with traditional healers who were treating patients with HIV, mouth ulcers, etc. And we actually had a workshop which was absolutely fascinating, of sharing with them what some of the medical treatment, state-of-the-art medical treatment, but they in turn sharing with us what they were doing for the community using herbs and other things. And I actually wrote a couple of papers on that, which was just quite remarkable, understanding local culture, understanding the work that traditional healers had. And for many South Africans, they were always seen as witch doctors and doing crazy things, which would, but that's not always the case. I mean, they were really quite well educated from a traditional point of view.
Prof, can I ask you, on the practical side, I remember there was something new and it was revolutionary, where there were dental, I think called auxiliaries, where they were allowed, they were educated and they got like a diploma where they could do simple fillings, or they could do, not as a qualified dentist, but they could do a lot of tremendous community dentistry where fillings were needed. It was like a bit less than being a dentist, but they could serve the wider population, which was, there was such a lack of.
So absolutely,
were you instrumental in creating this? It was something revolutionary.
Yeah, I was very, very much behind the working and training dental therapists. And as part of the public health approach of utilizing appropriate resources, it just didn't make sense for the millions or tens of millions of South Africans, because of the economy, because of the cost of setting up fancy dental equipment. So it truly made sense for dental therapists to be able to do basic dental care, such as simple fillings, occlusal fillings, extractions, cleanings, oral hygiene. But there was an incredible resistance to this concept, and we actually worked very hard to actually get it to actually get dental therapists to go, and they weren't supported, and they would end up in communities and they would actually give up that career because there was just so little support, which is and even to this day, what should have been an incredible cadre of dental workers in the wider community,
which is so needed,
without competition to the dentists. But there was this perception that they were going to take away a lot of the work that dentists were doing. And I also was very much part of writing new curricula and in fact introducing it at WITS, dental therapy. But we did have a lot of resistance, but I still very much believe in that, and as I mentioned earlier, having two oral hygienists, they did a far better job than I did at cleaning. They were able to give the patient far more time so that I could do the work that I was qualified to do and they could do work simultaneously. It just made much more sense from an efficiency point of view. And because dentistry is so costly, we were looking for ways to make dental care, dental services much more affordable to the wider community.
Are there still dental therapists?
So there are some dental therapists, but as I say, it did not get that that momentum and that push that it should have done to really provide, better care for the wider population. But I continued with my preventive and promotion. So one of the key drivers of the public health care approach was promoting health and preventive care rather than illness and treatment, but rather health and promotion of health, irrespective of what that stage. And so I actually started a new unit within the School of Public Health called the Health Promotion Unit. Now, not just dental. We were promoting health through good nutrition, physical activity, mental health, providing courses in the workplace of promoting health, in the workplace of giving people. And that was also very exciting, starting again a new section of health promotion. And then another turn in my career was taking students out into the community, urban community, inner city, Hillbrow, Berea, peri-urban and rural, as we've spoken about, and getting the students to come back and to share their experiences, share their understanding, and we would take pharmacy students, dental students, medical students, nursing students, because I was now in the School of Public Health, so I wasn't only limited to dental students. We introduced dental courses for medical students. So it was just, I was at a time, there was so many exciting new things in which I was involved. And then after one of these debriefings and sharing, the students came back and they said, gee, the community that we spoke to, they said some of the people go to bed hungry, and these people were not able to afford the food that was recommended, and they couldn't, they see the posters of eating 3 to 4 vegetables or fruits a day, but they couldn't afford it. And again, that suddenly planted a seed, literally and figuratively, in my head. And I started exploring more about this whole aspect of food and nutrition insecurity, and started doing research. And we did a study in the greater Johannesburg area, and we just saw that the percentage of people who either went to bed hungry, couldn't afford the food, ate the wrong kinds of food, it was a real serious problem. And so my focus again changed, and I'm doing research, came across the idea of urban food gardens, and I knew nothing about gardening. The only thing I knew about a garden was a place you play cricket or soccer. I didn't know one flower from the next, but for whatever reason I looked up urban food gardens, and it just resonated with me. And I started little food gardens the size of this lounge, planting some cabbages and spinach and carrots, etc. And suddenly there was such a swell of interest in this from early childhood development centres, abandoned youth, NGOs providing home-based care. And suddenly the need was so much greater, and I approached Joburg City and I said, we need to establish a garden with a decent space so that we can start teaching people how to grow food. And we did a mapping exercise of spaces within the inner city, and I rediscovered, which I remembered when I was in Cyrildene, Besaidenout Park.
Yeah.
It's 54 hectares large, incredibly neglected, and I put this idea to Joburg City. I said, I need a decent sized food garden, and they showed me this dump site. They said, you can have that. And being a high-risk person, I said, I'll take it. It took us 6 months just to clean up the mess. Tin cans, bottles, leather, old leather, shoes. It was just a rubble and a mess. Took us 6 months to clean up. We took some soil samples to have tested to make sure that there wasn't any heavy metals from the tin cans. And we started planting. And today we've got this flourishing, we've transformed a dump site into a flourishing food garden. We've transformed rubbish into compost. We've transformed unemployed people into people with a purpose and with some kind of education about growing food. But also the name of the project is the Siakana Food Garden. Siakana means building one another or building each other. But I'm very pleased to say that we've got about 15 different food gardens across the country, in different campuses, at the Nelson Mandela campus in Port Elizabeth, at the Maffing campus, Northwest University, 2 food gardens at Wits, 2 at University of Joburg. We've set up 3 food garden tunnels in 3 very poor schools in the Eastern Cape. And so my entire work and energy is now devoted to addressing food and nutrition security in many different sites and areas in South Africa, in Southern Africa, doing quite high-level research, developing online courses, and just about a month ago, I started a new center at the University of Johannesburg. So although I still enjoy the title of Professor Emeritus at Wits University, and I still do a little bit of supervision for some students, I met with the current Vice-Chancellor. He liked the kind of work that I was doing, and I've established the new Center for Ecological Intelligence at the University of Johannesburg, which is addressing this issue that I've been describing, but in a multi and a cross-disciplinary approach. So what that means is that I'm now working with engineers, because if you've got food gardens, you need water and energy systems and waste management. So I have to work with engineers. Every garden, every kind of space requires a different design. So I'm working with environmental architects, industrial designers, graphic designers. I'm working with the School of Tourism and Hospitality, because we have many visitors to our garden from overseas, professionals, young people. So ecotourism is quite a big aspect of it. And very importantly, in order to make it sustainable, I'm now working with the business school and the Center for Entrepreneurship. So for me, it's you know, people think I'm a sugar. They thought I was a sugar when I started a food garden, you know, at the age of 73, starting a new department. But I can't tell you how exciting it is to work with this range of and diverse skills and expertise. And without being politically correct, but being in South Africa, I'm very proud to say that I work with this team of people, as I say, engineers, architects, PhD in climate change, agriculture, entrepreneurship, and 5 of my team are black women.
Wow.
And I'm saying that not to be politically correct, because it's so important for them, for my colleagues, that when we go to schools and these young black kids see a black lady and she's an engineer, or she's an architect, or she's a PhD in climate change or entrepreneurship. So it's really very exciting being in South Africa at the time, and I know that as you know, you visit South Africa as an ex-South African, that a lot of people can say that in the circumstances in which we find ourselves in South Africa, what can we do? And I'll just share that Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, when he was a young philosophy student and he was finding some direction, he went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and he had an interview with him. And Jonathan Sachs describes that interview, and he said to the Rebbe, he said, in the circumstances in which I find myself, I want your advice. And the Rebbe stopped him. He says, you never find yourself in circumstances, you make those circumstances.
Wow.
And I've also used that idea as that there are difficulties. I'd be absolutely naive that the challenges of poverty are frightening, of poor education, of poor health care. But this is where I find myself. It's hashgocha that I find myself in South Africa. This is where I've been privileged to have my whatever expertise or experience that I have, and this is where I feel I can make that contribution. So it's been a remarkable career. I use a lot of the ideas of the Rambam in my lectures. The Rambam used, health was such a big part of him, and preventive health and mental and physical and environmental health. Quite incredible that Torah offers so many unbelievable aspects that I use all the time. Planting a seed. If you want to see an example of yesh me'ayin, of something from nothing, you put a seed into the ground,
That you can't see.
the seed disintegrates, and suddenly you see something coming out. And it's the power of the soil. It's not, the seed stimulates the power of the soil. Yesh me'ayin. So I just love sort of blending and converging the little bit that I know from Yiddishkeit into the kind of work, and with the Rebbe's Brucha, and just working with just wonderful people.
It's amazing. I just went to
Sorry, I went on.
Mark, I just want to thank you so much. It's been such a really honor and a privilege. And I remember when we were in Transkei, I remember we called it the Schleps tour, where we helped the rural people there. They'd never seen white people before, and you were in charge of us, and we couldn't have wished for somebody better. And you were so caring and so giving, and your experience and what you mentioned, you are such an inspiration. Really such an inspiration for all the viewers, for everybody. You are someone we can all strive to emulate. You take something and you go with it, and you take chances, and look what you've achieved. It's incredible, and you affected so many people's lives. So it's been such an honor to have known you back in dental school days, and to be reunited now, and to hear what you've done through these years. It's remarkable.
Thank you.
And you may just have mazel and bracha, and continue in your exceptional work that you do. You are a visionary. And you really are, and you put into practice with your ideas, and we can all learn so much from your incredible work that you do.
Thank you.
Your passion. You have such a passion for what you do, and we're very fortunate to have you in this community, and I really want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful.
Cheers.